Oh, I love this time of the year. Although it's a month later than normal. But that's right, everyone. The Premier League is back as of this weekend. I, for one, am absolutely buzzing for it. Considering we're a Liverpool fan, we have got the most to lose in the sense that we are the reigning champions. And do I think that we are going to retain our crown? You'll find out now, because here are my predictions for the Premier League 2020-21 season. One thing that's for sure, it's going to be a season like absolutely no other, considering that it's being condensed into a smaller period and window of time, and obviously with all the COVID rules going on, we are starting behind closed doors, which may well have an effect on some of the teams. Obviously, we have returning faces from the Championship in the form of Fulham and West Brom, and a team that we have been waiting to come back for so long, Leeds United. Will they be battling out at the bottom? Well, I think Fulham definitely will. And that is why I have them in 20th place. Now, the reason for this is very simple, is that I don't think Fulham have actually improved their team that much, really, since the last time that they were in the Premier League. Do I think they'll be as bad as they were last time in the Premier League? Not in the slightest. They have strengthened the midfield in the form of Mario Lemina and Harrison Reed, and I think they've got a very capable manager in the form of Scott Parker, who's a lot more kind of pragmatic than Jovanovic was when he came up. I believe, was it Jokanovic? Jokanovic. It's easy to play nice football in the Championship and be alright, but Fulham only just scraped through via the playoffs, and I kind of get the impression that they're going to be involved in a relegation battle again, and for a while will always be known as a bit of a yo-yo club. This is just something we're going to have to get used to. Naturally, before I continue, I would like to stipulate that all these predictions have been based on the current squads available to the clubs as of Monday, the 7th of September 2020. So yes, for me, I think Fulham are going to be in a bit of trouble, and I can see them finishing rock bottom. And just above Fulham, but joining them in the drop down to the Championship, I can see a team that has been flirting with relegation for the last few seasons, Brighton. Now, actually, Brighton have had a very good window in bringing in Adam Lallana on a free, which I think is a great deal, bringing in Dendoncker, and also getting in Joel Veltman. Defensively, that seems a lot more stronger, but defensively has never really been the problem so much for Brighton. It's more the fact of going the other way. And I do feel that without Glenn Murray, despite the fact he didn't have his best year last year, and Maupay stepped in and played quite well, and Trossard, I do feel that they are lacking a little bit, and eventually Graham Potter's way of football will be found out. Very similar to Fulham, it's great trying to play kind of possession-based football and front foot football, but if you do not have the personnel to carry that out correctly, it can be very dangerous. I've always maintained that it's difficult to keep clean sheets all the way through the season if you're not scoring goals at the other end, because eventually you need to alleviate the pressure. You cannot always rely on clean sheets to keep you going all the way through, and that's where I do feel that Brighton will score a few, but not enough to keep them in the Premier League, and I don't think they'll keep enough clean sheets either. They've been flirting with relegation for a little while now, and I think that this year might be the year that they go down. And call me stereotypical, but I do think that there'll be two of the newly promoted teams going back down. I think the other promoted team to go back down will be West Brom. The Baggies are obviously familiar with being in the Premier League, and in Slaven Bilic they have a manager that knows the ins and outs of it. I just feel that maybe they've got a very... I look at their squad and I think it's a very Championship squad. They've added quality in the form of Mateus Pereira on a permanent deal, which I think is a brilliant signing because he really impressed me in the Championship, and if he can get them firing like Jack Grealish did for Villa last year, they may well have a chance of staying up. But again, I feel that goal scoring is going to be the problem. They have got Charlie Austin, who's obviously been there and done it at this level, but again, not sure if you can keep him fit, not sure if they're going to score enough goals, but if anyone can keep them up, it's definitely going to be Bilic. And yes, it might be a bit of bias coming in, but I do predict that Aston Villa, the other Birmingham club, will finish just outside the relegation places like they did last year in 17th. The Villains have not had the best transfer window in the shape of the fact they've only bought in Matty Cash and not done too else, but I think you could tell towards the end of last season the bulk of the transfers that they made started to gel together very well. They started to be able to defend together very well. They looked like a very cohesive unit. I do think that Villa are actually a lot better than their 17th position last year shows. They do score goals, probably not enough to be a comfortable mid-table team, but I do feel their kind of turn of form and turn of mentality towards the end of the year last year is enough to make me think that they're actually going to be safe. I don't think it'll be comfortably, but I do think they'll be safe. Just above Aston Villa, I have Newcastle United. That's right, the Brucey bonus can only last for so long, and even though he did a sensational job last year, I do find it hard to think that Newcastle will be able to replicate what they did again. They're going to be a hard one to call Newcastle, because they could finish a lot higher depending on how Almiron, and in particular Alan St-Maximin, get on. The French winger kind of got into a form a lot more towards the end of last year, and if they can get him fit and firing, I think he is nearly as good as nearly most wingers in the Premier League outside of the top 6. Or he's definitely a top 6 player, put it that way. A bit of a weird one here, and I think this is going to catch a few people out, and people aren't going to agree with me on this, but I do think Sheffield United will get a little bit of second season syndrome, and I can see them falling off. Nowhere near enough to get relegated, but I can see them falling off a little bit, and that's why I've got them down for 15th position. They played really well last year, and not a lot of teams managed to figure out just how to play against them, but I do feel that maybe a season on, and with the loss of Dean Henderson, as good as Aaron Ramsdale is, I do think that potentially they could be caught out a little bit. I still think they're going to have more than enough to stay up, and they were a very, very good side. But again, I think goals-wise, they may be struggling a little bit. But if they slack off in any way in terms of the clean sheets and the defensive solidity they had last year, then they could find themselves in trouble. But I don't think they're going to be anywhere near relegation at all. Just above them in 14th, I have Crystal Palace. We always have the same about Crystal Palace. I know a lot of mates that think that they're probably going to be in a bit of trouble this year, but Roy Hodgson is way too smart for that. He always finds a way to get them out of trouble, and they're never ever really in danger. And with the additions of Nathan Ferguson, who's a very good young up-and-coming fullback and potential centre-back, and Eberechi Eze in particular, I think they're actually going to be a little bit, not of a surprise package, but I'll be very surprised. I won't be surprised if they finish higher than I think they're going to. And the last of the newly promoted sides, Leeds United, I have them finishing comfortably away from relegation in 13th position. The only reason I don't have them higher is literally because they still have only got a choice with the two strikers in Rodrigo or Patrick Bamford. Bamford is notoriously not even particularly that good at Championship level, and he's never cut at Premier League level. I think Rodrigo's a decent signing, but I can't see him getting more than maybe 10 or 12 goals. So I think that defensively they're so solid, and Bielsa has been around the block way too many times. He's too smart. He's influenced so many managers in the Premier League that I think that they'll be absolutely fine and have no issues whatsoever. Leeds to comfortably finish 13th and start building towards establishing themselves as a Premier League powerhouse again. Next is the most stereotypical of Premier League teams, and that is West Ham finishing 12th. They'll probably start the season really badly. David Moyes will get sacked. They'll have a little period where they think they're going to get relegated. Then all the quality of their team will actually come to the fore, and then they'll end up finishing comfortably mid-table. End of story. No issue. That was quick, wasn't it? But a team I do expect to improve on last year is Southampton, and that's because they've cut away from a lot of the kind of players that they had on there. I do think Højbjerg will be a bit of a loss, but they have improved the defence in terms of Kyle Walker-Peters getting him in permanently and getting in Mohamed Salisu from Valladolid, who's a very good up-and-coming defender. I think if they can sort the defence out, they've got more than enough going forward in terms of attacker with Nathan Redmond, James Ward-Prowse, Stuart Armstrong, Danny Ings, Che Adams. They've got a brilliant team. Even Gineppo as well can be very good on his day, and I think Southampton will probably raise a few eyebrows this year and won't be anywhere near a relegation battle. If anything, they'll be pushing towards that little group of clubs that are just outside the Big Six. And next up is the footballing equivalent of a Volvo. Strong, sturdy, reliable, but not going to turn any heads. Burnley will be top 10 again very comfortably. Sean Dyche is a brilliant manager, does fantastic with what he has. I think he works very well with the way that Burnley want to play, and I hope that they never go into that state that Brighton did, where they kind of want to play more expensive attacking football, because I think that would be a really bad issue for the club. They brought in a couple of players that will probably do quite well, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to be any better or any worse than they were last year. Chris Wood will still score a lot of goals, as will Jay Rodriguez, and they'll be very difficult to beat. And in Nick Pope, they've arguably, for me, got the best goalkeeper outside of Alisson and Ederson in the league. This one might be a little bit controversial as well, but I'm actually going to put Leicester to finish 9th. The reason for that is that Jamie Vardy isn't getting any younger, and even though he had one of his best returns in the Premier League season last year, I kind of get the impression that the Europa League is really going to take it out of them. It depends on how much they prioritise it. If they don't prioritise it too much, then I think that they could finish higher. But knowing Brendan Rodgers and the way he'll want to have something to prove in Europe, I think he'll want to go for the Europa League, because it is a competition that potentially they could win. Unlikely as that may be, I do think he'll have a few points to prove. Losing Ben Chilwell was a big loss, but at the same time they brought in Timothy Castagna from Atalanta, and he's a very good player that's probably going to take over from that position. I'd be very surprised if Leicester were in any kind of danger, but I don't see them pushing for Europe this time around either. And I think they're very much the same with Everton. Carlo Ancelotti's first full year in charge, I look at their team and I think Allen's a brilliant signing. If they get in James Rodriguez, I think that's another very good signing. But again, that's not really what Everton need, in the sense of goal scoring is an issue, and they already have too many number 10s as it is. So why they're trying to kind of add another one to it, I'm not really 100% sure, unless Gylfi Sigurdsson is genuinely not going to be involved in any way. They're a bit of a weird one. They could be brilliant under Ancelotti because he's obviously one of the best managers who has ever lived. But at the moment, I don't see them still challenging for that top 6. I think they might need another window with Ancelotti's pull and get themselves a top-class striker. Then I think we could be talking. Probably my biggest shock of all of it is that I've gone for Spurs to finish outside of the top 6. Now, I do have reasons for this in the sense that Jan Vertonghen has gone. Mourinho plays a different kind of football to the way that we are with Spurs. They play very well towards the back end of last year, but if Harry Kane or Heung-min Son gets injured, goals are going to be very difficult for them to come by. Kane has proven that he's not injury prone, but he can take a few knocks, and when he does, Spurs notoriously do struggle for goals, no matter how good Son can be in his absence. I think Doherty's a great signing. I think Højbjerg's a great signing. I don't particularly want to talk about Joe Hart that much, but he's probably a decent signing. I just don't think they're going to have enough in comparison to the team that I've put 6th. I think that's what's more to do with it. Because that team is Wolves, and I think that Wolves have got a very, very good squad overall. With the addition of Fabio Silva and Fernando Marçal from Lyon, as well as Sarkic from Villa, I think they've got a decent squad as it already was, and they're very well knitted together. I do think they will miss Doherty a bit, but Espirito Santo is one of the best managers in the league for my money, and he would not have let him go unless he had a plan and a ready-made backup available. Of that I am 100% sure. I think Wolves will make sure that they do what they didn't do last year and finish in that top 6. And now with the agonisingly close but not quite near enough Champions League football 5th place, I'm afraid I'm going to have to give it to Arsenal. I think they're going to run United, Chelsea, Liverpool and City very, very close for the top 4 this year. From what I've seen of Arsenal, Arteta's got them playing some really good football. He seems to have kind of developed this big game mentality where they defend really well, then hit teams on the counter, and with Saka, with Aubameyang, with Nketiah, with Pepe, with all these great counter-attacking players, I think they're a lot more threatening now than they used to be when they come and visit the big teams or they host the big teams. But I still feel they have that in them. If something happened to Aubameyang, Arsenal would be in some serious trouble. I think they've had the best window apart from Chelsea. If anybody else, they brought in Willian, who I think is a brilliant signing. He's been there, done it. They've brought in Paulo Mari, which is a good signing. Cedric has now joined properly. They got Gabriel from Lille, and most importantly, they also got Daniel Ceballos. Actually, it's just Danny. But I think all those players, they've had a really, really good window. Arsenal. I think that they're going to be a lot better than they were last year, and a lot closer than they were last year. It would not surprise me if it came down to the last day of the season. It really wouldn't. And so, regrettably, in 4th, I've got Manchester United, who have obviously gone off and signed Donny van de Beek. Bruno Fernandes is now firmly entrenched in the squad and in the team, and I think he's going to have a brilliant year this year. And I think United will do very well, but I don't think they're necessarily going to improve that much on last year. They're still a young team, they're still developing, there's still a lot to like about the way that they play. They are exciting to watch now, but I do feel that the defensive frailties are still there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with their number 1 goalkeeper. If David De Gea does become unhappy because he's not the number 1, how is that going to affect the mood around the place? Because he's got a lot of sway at that club. It's all going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of internal political stuff going on. But remember, if they sign someone like Jadon Sancho, then it blows the entire thing completely open. We just don't know. But for me at the moment, with the squad they have, United will finish 4th, but not comfortably. And this was actually a really tough call to decide between 2nd and 3rd, because I think 1st place are literally going to walk away with the title this year. But I've just gone for Chelsea in 3rd. Only because I wonder how long it's going to take the new signings to bed in, but they've had the best window of anybody. They brought in Werner, Ziyech, Chilwell, Malang Sarr, Thiago Silva and Kai Havertz. They are now, on paper, mouth-watering going forward, but that wasn't really the problem last year either. The problem last year was defensively, and Thiago Silva, good player as he is he really in his pomp? Not really, no. I'd say he's a little bit on the older side. Ben Chilwell is an improvement on Emerson and on Marcus Alonso, definitely. Malang Sarr can be particularly very good, but again, he's very, very young. I do wonder if they're still going to have the same defensive frailties. They haven't sorted the goalkeeper issue out. Kepa and Caballero are still there. Both of them are prone to making massive gaffes and errors, and that's the only reason I think Chelsea are going to finish 3rd. If it hadn't been for the kind of defensive frailties in the goalkeeper scenario, I would have put them 2nd, ahead of Liverpool, who I think are going to finish 2nd, and that means, yes, they will not be retaining their crown. But that's because, and I'm going to get a bit passionate about this because I'm a Liverpool fan, I'm a bit annoyed that they haven't signed anybody of note. you'll forgive me if I say we during this because I am a Liverpool fan, but Tsimikas is a player we have needed for a while because we need a backup for Andy Robertson. That is not Alberto Moreno. So I think that's great. It's good to see that Dejan Lovren's gone. It's good to see that there's a load of youngsters coming through. And I think that's where Klopp is getting the impression that we don't really need to sign anybody else because we've got all this brilliant hotbed of talent in Brewster, Curtis Jones, Nico Williams, and the like coming through. So I think there's that kind of looking over at what United are doing. I think Liverpool are trying to do a very similar thing. I just feel like when you're on top, you should always strive to improve by making a big signing of some variety. Thiago from Bayern Munich. If Liverpool got Thiago from Bayern Munich, I'd say they win the league right now. But as it stands, they've not done that. And I was watching them recently. I watched them in the Community Shield, and it feels like when Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't playing or Robertson's not having a particularly good game, there is zero to no creativity apart from occasionally Jordan Henderson in that midfield, and that is a problem. City can attack you from absolutely anywhere. United can attack you from absolutely anywhere. With Liverpool, it's either the fullbacks or not a lot, or the counter. There is no in between. And teams that come and sit with a low block, you're never going to be able to do that. They did it last year, but you could tell progressively that I don't know if the hunger's going to be there. It's going to be interesting to see. I just feel like a real quality in addition in midfield was needed for Liverpool to really retain their title, and as it stands, they've not done that. So even if they sell Gini Wijnaldum and bring Thiago in, I think they'll win the title. But without him, or without Aouar, or a player of that kind of mould, not sure. And that means naturally that I've got Manchester City in first. They've had a very good window as well with the players they brought in the form of Ferran Torres. Scott Carson's on loan as a backup goalkeeper. He's still better than Claudio Bravo. Got Pablo Moreno, and of course they've got Nathan Ake from Bournemouth, who I think will sit down there with the port and sort of shore things up potentially. I still think they'll have defensive weaknesses. The fullbacks are still quite forward-thinking and pretty overblown, and I do think that they are going to struggle defensively, and they will allow teams to have chances, but they'll just outscore everybody. They've got the best player in the league in Kevin De Bruyne. They didn't even miss Leroy Sané particularly last year. It'll be interesting to see what happens without David Silva. If Foden can step into that role, then City are going to absolutely cakewalk this league as far as I'm concerned, because their squad on paper is just absolutely unreal, and they're beginning to freshen it up slightly, which is a worrying thing. Don't get me wrong, it's a very, very worrying thing. I think Gabriel Jesus is due a very good season. This could be the year where there's the passing of the torch between him and Aguero, but I'm not 100%, but in my mind, I'm pretty sure that that's probably what's going to happen, and I do see City unfortunately running away with the league. But I said the same thing last year, and look what happened there. So fingers crossed I'm wrong. And if you think I'm wrong, then why don't you let me know down in the comment section below, politely please. And obviously let me know what you think is going to happen in the Premier League this year. Am I completely off? Is there going to be any big surprises? Who's going to get the golden boot? Who's going to win player of the year? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section. And while you're there, please drop a like on the video, share, and subscribe for more football chat, more football gaming, more football everything here at MikeRo. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and stay cool.